This is the script, the podcast for screenwriters, by screenwriters, the Script Podcast Live Pandemic Edition. On the script, we believe story moves pages, story moves products, story moves people. Tonight, Train to Busan by Sang-ho Yeon, screenplay by Joo-Suk Park and Sang-ho Yeon. I'm David Negrin. My screenwriters tonight are Alka, Khushalani and Kristina Leath-Malin. We want to start tonight by thanking our medical workers, nurses, doctors, residential care and shelter workers, janitors, cleaning crews, law enforcement, public safety, first responders, public transportation, bus drivers, subway operators in New York City, people in the warehouses, the grocery stores, pharmacies, pet stores, restaurants doing takeout, like my DeWitt Cafe next to me. I've been picking up breakfast there a couple times a week with that morning glory sandwich. Manufacturers creating products we need, the PPE, the clinical researchers working on testing and finding a cure for the coronavirus, everyone on the front line in New York, in the United States, and around the world. You have our thanks. Guys, how are you? How are you doing in quarantine?
Good. This was the week I forgot I was in quarantine. This was the week I totally lost all track of time as well. But I thought this was normal. This was my new normal week. It hit me that, probably next week is going to be the same as well. So here we are.
Kristina?
Oh. Yeah, this was the week where I realized I have four walls and I need to see more outside. So we, as a family, we were forcing ourselves to social distance with masks, with gloves, be very aware of our surroundings, but taking the fact that summer is kind of almost here and the springtime is definitely here, and it's nice to see things blooming. So, Beyond the Four Walls, that's my next film. I don't know.
Beyond the Four Walls, yeah. So I want to start out, Alka forwarded this New Yorker article by Jill Lenore, which is called What Our Contagion Fables Are Really About. And last week, we were all talking about what's this series about, what this series of podcasts that we're doing about. And this article talks about the fables of Contagion, Oedipus Rex by Sophocles, the Decameron by Boccaccio, the Mask of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe, The Last Man by Mary Shelley, The Scarlet Plague by Jack London, The Plague by Camus, Angels in America by Tony Kushner, The Stand by Stephen King. This is what we're doing. We are entering the Contagion fables in this series. What do you guys think? We're not the only ones thinking about this, is my point.
Alka?
Alka, it makes sense to me that we're not the only ones thinking about contagion fables, contagion storytelling during a plague.
Honestly, I feel like the first thing I did was this. I started looking at my favorite people, and I started looking at their plague work. And the first thing I went to was Lars von Trier, his Epidemic. And I was like, oh my God, how do you prep for it? Because we're out of snow day. The first couple of days, you're like, boss, gonna have a week off to keep my job. And then we went into it's 2.5, 3 weeks. This is a bit much. Oh, people are losing their employment. And so I'm like, where does it progress? I think what we haven't talked about too is the stages of an actual, we started that, stages of an epidemic. It was when is going to be that point when I actually do try to punch someone for something they have if my daughter is dying? That kind of we're not there yet, and Contagion was probably a very smart choice of yours to start with because it was before it happened into it. But and we're not quite at the road yet, but where are we between Contagion and the road? Where are we? And how do we measure that? I think is very right now. How do we measure if that's 0 and that's 100? Are we like at a 33? Or are we like at a 13? What would you call where we're at and where we're heading, considering there's no vaccine on the close horizon?
And where does the storytelling help or hurt us? I know that the storytelling in, watching the news every day is starting to hurt us. And we're all learning this, like too much news, too much conflict, too much of the negative can have a, negative effect on us.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the longest time, the tradition of filmmaking, of specifically horror is what I'm thinking of, has always kind of spoken to a greater societal shift or some kind of greater issue of its time. We look at, things like Rosemary's Baby, which was really kind of, this was a moment when women had got the pill. And so there was a lot of anxiety around women's reproductive health and things like that. So it's like here we have, we're kind of picking and choosing, we're cherry picking our moments, as it were. But I think it's interesting to think of all these, all the pandemic stories as also as parables of, greater issues. And this is what we were talking about. This New Yorker article was kind of positing that there is always something bigger that these films get at. And that's why they're so satisfying right now, because
it's satisfying. It's cathartic. Is it too soon for some people? Yes, it's very triggering because we can only take so much of this at once. So that's why I think doing it with you guys, watching these films with you, analyzing them with you with this sort of purpose, the analytical eye, the screenwriter's perspective has helped me get some perspective from it. There is a great quote in this article, the Jill Lenore article, that says this: "A plague is like a lobotomy. It cuts away the higher realms, the loftiest capacities of humanity, and leaves only the animal. Farewell to the giant powers of man," Mary Shelley wrote in The Last Man in 1826, after disease has ravaged the world. "Farewell to the arts, to eloquence. Every story of epidemic is a story of illiteracy, language made powerless, man made brute. But then, again, the existence of the story of books, no matter how grim, is itself a sign, evidence that humanity endures."
I'm going to disagree with that a little bit. And I'm totally taking this from a World War Z school script and the writer's premise of the idea in World War Z. You didn't clip the whole idea of brute and this kind of archaic going back to caveman sense. I think it's the people that have eloquent words, a way of saying that we may not survive as lofty people because those brutes. And the plain and simple is the people that have tangible skills, that actually do blue collar things, that actually have a knack for survival and living, will continue the species. And people that spend most of their time manipulating others and not having tangible skills in a world without electronics, in a world without, 401k plans and without stock options. Yeah, they're not going to survive because they don't know how to build a house. So the eloquent people will say the brutes, but I say it's the blue collars, the men and women that use their hands and that can actually live in the woods for a couple of months, that don't have to have their butler build them a fire, So I disagree with that. Yes, the top will be chopped off, but the top that know how to survive won't. I think it's more about survival and really getting back to earth and not calling it like a brute versus like the elite.
But I think here she's using brute as a way of kind of talking about the loss of humanity, which is the case for all these zombie movies, right? Zombie movies are always about a loss of humanity. And well, in the Train to Busan, you know, the loss of humanity is brought on by like capitalism run amok, right? And we see this guy like going straight into the movie. It's like you see this guy who is captain of industry, who is like really well off.
He's a fund manager. Later, the warrior dude calls him a bloodsucker.
Yeah. So his company ends up being responsible for the plague, right? So this is a greater, like it's a little bit of a fantasy. I think we all kind of nurture in that you get to see somebody who is responsible for some terrible thing that's happening on the earth right now and having a reckoning with that and his role in it. You know, that is, I think, what really speaks to, I mean, this film is all about morality, and we can get into in all the ways it is about morality. But I think all of these films, in a way, they address this issue of, you know, when governments have failed, when humanity has failed, what are you left with, right? And
which is why I like
always ends up being a moral question, because you are left with a sense of right and wrong. Still, you are still left with, like in this case, like you must work together to survive. You know, there's always a morality churning under the surface.
Which is why I like that metaphor. The plague is a lobotomy, right? You know, the human condition is, and a lot of art is about our argument between the intellectual self and the animal self. You know, are we animals or are we, you know, higher beings? And something like fear and a plague, something that can infect our bodies, something that makes us very so vulnerable, turns us back into the animal, and we see that argument. We're going to talk about Train to Busan, but The Walking Dead, the metaphor of the title of that zombie TV series, The Walking Dead, is the irony of The Walking Dead isn't the zombies, but the people, the humans who survived, who've lost their humanity. Right? The Walking Dead is what happens to us when we lose our humanity, when there is a crisis, a pandemic, and we can't keep it together. We can't be leaders. We can't be brave, and we can't set a good example.
Well, to The Walking Dead, and for Walking Dead fans out there, the little caveat is we see Rick Grimes and then we see a disaster-ridden Earth. We don't know how the government really went down, except for a little bit in season 1 with that one bomb shelter. But we don't know the stages of degradation of city, state, government. We just know he's awake and it's a shit show. Sorry, my language, sorry.
Yeah, so in Train to Busan, we see that duality in the father. I'm gonna say his name one time, and then I'm just gonna call him the father, Suk-woo. So I don't insult people. Suk-woo, and then we see the CEO guy, right? Who's the total one side of the brute, the non-human, and then we see the most human, which is the character named Sang-hwa, who's he's like the warrior. He's like the pudgy guy who's protecting his pregnant wife the whole time, and he is the good guy, and he understands what it's like to be a father because he's been dreaming about it, and he, to the very end, is does the right thing, like Grimes.
Yeah, and I think, I would put further on the spectrum the child, right? The Suan, who is really the moral center of this film. And I'm also going to say I hated this character, but we'll get into that.
Underused. I think their use of her. Their use of her. You don't hate.
No. She's going to be my one down, but I'll save it for that section.
Why don't you jump into that? Can
we get an overview of the story and do that?
Alka, one down.
Suan. No, please. This kid is like. I mean, there is no child like this. Children are selfish. They're horrible. And you know what?
Somebody's been in quarantine too long.
Disclaimer. Somebody has a kid.
So I'm just saying, I know of what I speak, okay? In extraordinary circumstances, they are,
amazing.
This house is a prison.
Even the best.
All the memes came from you.
Even the best kid in the world is not like, this one is about to be like, she's about to be crowned Dalai Lama, okay? And her singing sucks, and her, like, she's just like one, there are two characters in this, okay? I'm going to just say it. I'm going to
David, we're about to fight. You're going to have another fight on this podcast.
Let's go. I'm ready for you. So there are two characters. And I think, like, we'll get into like how great the other characters are, but the two characters that really stood out for me that were just so one-dimensional was like, one was this kid, Suan, who never made a wrong move in her life, in her short life. And then there was this guy who was the COO of, he was just evil.
One-dimensional, wicked witch of the West.
And these two characters just... there was so much going on in terms of, the other characters in this film that you could really like kind of empathize with and really see them in full dimensional humanity. There were these two, and they were actually on either end of the spectrum. So that's like on the absolute innocent side with Suan, as, like the moral center, I'm always going to do the right thing. I'm an idealist, blah, blah, blah. And then on the other side was the COO.
And she's like a liability. She's not really running very well. She's, at one point I'm like, why can't she like help out?
So she's, I don't have so much to add to that, but I would just say like,
I want to contest her stuff. I don't even want to do a one-up on that when we get to me, okay? I just want to contest her.
Okay. You'll get your chance. So my one-up is going to be, like, I think what's interesting about this film is that it really is about a character arc. It's like a very deep kind of, it's like the study on this one character, which is the hedge fund guy, who goes from being utterly selfish and materialistic to like really and individualistic, right? He's only thinking about himself. He goes into this place where he makes the ultimate sacrifice for his daughter, who really wasn't worth it. But anyway, so she
wow.
So he
must be rough in your household tonight.
Journey, and I think this film like kind of wears its morality on its sleeve. It's those ideas about capitalism run amok are very kind of clear in this character, and there are all these judgments that people make based on economics and socioeconomics that happen all the way along these
in the train
films. Through this film, and they're all embodied in this one character. Like there's so much of this film's like themes are just like, and it becomes like a character study, but it kind of remains true to its horror or zombie roots, in which it is all about this, morality, basically.
Damn you. Because I'm ready to hate you, and then your one-up mirrors my fucking one-up, and you suck. Because I was ready just to hate you the whole way through. But then I fall in love with you again. Okay. So, whatever. Can I speak now?
Floor is yours.
Not if you're going to talk about how great Suan is.
She's so amazing. Okay, so here we go.
I can't talk about people that have more than one child in their household during this epidemic and are losing their hair and turning gray and calling for L'Oreal to save them. But what I found with the daughter, and I'm going to give the daughter just because I'm changing it. My one-ups are the daughter, the CEO, and the moral call of the lead character. Why? You already said it. I agree. I haven't seen and actually read a good arc since the Interview with the Vampire trilogy, because I started off hating Lestat and fell in love with Lestat. And I'm like, oh, when you give me the most loathsome character and within a book or two or a couple of hours, I find myself empathizing. You have won me as a writer and as a director, either or, mostly as a writer. So I adored his arc because he was despicable. He was very selfish, right down to polishing his car and like writing off his kid and his wife and not wanting to even get back with her, not listening to his mother, giving her a we too when he already got her we too because he doesn't buy her gifts because he doesn't know her. And at the very end, last moment, when he's having a daydream of her as a baby and he's having this reckoning of her life being the more important thing and you know how it goes, I was like, that is an arc. That is a stunning arc for a character to take. And I was 100% on his bandwagon. I was also on her bandwagon and the COO's bandwagon because prior to 2020, I would have agreed with you on the COO because it's very cookie cutter. But now in 2020, considering we have Trump, a bunch of Trump fans that literally, if I were to walk in there as a black person amongst a bunch of white people, they would be like, where did you come from? They wouldn't give me the benefit of the doubt. They wouldn't broaden their horizons to be empathetic and morally correct. We're assuming that before Trump was president, we would assume morality wins. Now with Trump
in the train car, in that scene in the train car?
Yes, I believe that is, he spoke truth of what would have really happened in this day and age. If all three of us had come in there having gone from those other poor men eco cars into the first class car, that's a Trump car they walked in. He played the Trump character to the T. It's just we weren't ready for that because we had Obama. But now that we've had a Trump, COO is very much a defined character of where we're living in right now. 100%. And, okay, we're going to do the mommy thing here. I like her.
You're agreeing with Alka, at least on the way this film uses archetypal characters.
Yeah, of course. But with the daughter, I'm saying you need to give her a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, because I want to call the tween, any of the 2 digits before proper teen, 10 to 14, that point, whereas they make their own decisions, but they're still doing the playbook of mom and dad. So she is not a defined character because she is not a defined human at this point. So expecting her to have the same arc that say you or I in our 30s, 40s, 50s, me in my 20s would have just doesn't make any sense. I understand that everything she says is because my mommy said that. My mommy said this is smart. That's where she's at. That's all she knows. Give me a teenager.
No, I'm talking about how she's like always like ready to give up her seat and like, stand up for like the little guy and
But I think that's very, very.
It's one dimensional, and it doesn't. But
age to what it's supposed to be. She's not someone that says, after 20 years living, reading Stanislavski. But no, she's not that kid. She's been reading cartoon books. Every moral bit she's got predominantly from her mom, but it isn't like she has a diverse layered playbook. And she even says when he's like, oh, only my mom says only mean people would say that. And he's like, oh, your mom's probably uneducated. She's a very limited playbook. And I think it leans into that. Nothing that she says is supposed to be complex. It's only supposed to highlight her where she goes in future development. And which
can I agree with both of you on Suan? One, I agree that she creates this pole of innocence and goodness that we can measure her father against. But also, I agree, if you've seen any Harry Potter movies, you see that children at that age can have complex characters and complex ideas. And there were moments like the one you mentioned where she mentions what other people say about her father. She's very observant. I wanted a lot more of that. And she does disappear for like a good chunk of Act 2. We're like, where is she? We're following a lot of groups of characters, which is one of my favorite things about this film, but she does disappear. Please finish your one up, one down.
Those were all my one ups. My one down. No, well, okay, I'm gonna no one down. My other one up was that structurally, I liked that the act breaks were like the first act was Seoul getting to Daejeon, and the second act was Daejeon, and the third act was getting to Busan. So it was very clean, and I was like, even with using the film footage of going into a train station, they really hit their act breaks as a writer and as a director. So I dug that. I was like, okay, right on. So no downs.
Okay.
It was a movie.
You did watch this film something like 7 times, right?
No, probably a few more, but don't judge me.
So you're a fan. And
and I've seen the prequel, and I'm ready for the sequel coming out.
You've been pitching us this for this series since the beginning.
Yeah, I dig it.
All right, let me do my one up, one down, then we'll go right to structure and character. I have the same one up as Kristina. My first one up was going to be that as a screenwriter, it's really hard to carry a large ensemble cast throughout a film. And we do have a bit of an ensemble here. It's a little bit, this is a zombie film, but it borrows from the disaster movie conventions where you have series of groups of people that you follow throughout, and slowly they get whittled down, which is, I know in horror films sometimes they do that, but it starts out with a much larger group. 30 minutes into this, there's still a ton of people alive on this train. And then we have the father and daughter, we have the sports team, we have the 2 older ladies who, do we think they're a couple? I wanted to ask you.
No, they're best friends.
They're sisters.
I thought they were best friends.
Best friends, sisters, couple. Okay. The director has us thinking. Okay, that's great.
I thought they were always sisters, right? She kept saying, like, where's my sister? And
I didn't hear that. Okay. But 2 older ladies, the conductor, the homeless crazy guy. We have a bunch of these character archetypes. And from a screenwriting perspective, what was accomplished throughout this whole film is they serviced all of these characters throughout, and they all had full plot arcs, right? And that's hard to do. And that's why this zombie film was 2 hours. They took the time to make sure that they serviced all sets of characters. They didn't just throw them away, or they didn't use cliches. And especially when we get to the low point, every one of these sets of characters has a low point moment in the low point. But I did not expect them to kill off the protagonist. And I was very impressed with that. And I said, wow, when that happened, and the cinematic way in which they did it, because when they opened with him being a bad father, buying her the same gift that he bought her before, not necessarily taking an interest, you saw her inner yearning for her father. But then at the end, when they've been through all this together and he has to leave the car, you hear her outer screaming, which was the same what she was doing from the inside beforehand. We got a metaphor for what he's been doing to her this whole time by not being a present father. She's screaming, come back to me, be with me, stay with me. And we see that in the end, and he finally gets to feel what it's like to leave her, but what he's doing to her, because he has to leave because he's infected.
I have to agree. I cried on that because if you think
great.
about it in your mind, if your last memory because his eyes glazed over, if your last what do you hope your last memory before you turned zombie? His last memory was holding her. And I thought that was beautiful. And I cried every time.
I just thought it was ballsy to kill off your main character. It was awesome. And yes, and so his plot arc and his internal character arc all twist together, land the pirouette, and he falls off the train. So I was brilliantly done. I have to say a one down.
Don't do it.
I don't know. I have a hard time. I had one earlier. It's not coming, but you guys have convinced me otherwise. I think there. Yeah, I mean, the CEO. I have no trouble.
Flat. I knew you were going to say that.
I have no trouble with him being flat and being one-dimensional. Somebody needed to be the bad guy. And I love that he ends up. There ends up being a tete-a-tete between him and the father in the end, right? And we actually see the CEO transform into zombie. And I thought that was a great metaphor for every finance person out there who doesn't care about little people. That's what's happening, you know? When you're a fund manager and you're trying to get people to go out in this pandemic, you're trying to get people back out in the streets because you want your stock portfolio to improve. That's what's happened to you. You are slowly transforming into a zombie. And we got to see that at the end. I think we could have done a little more with Sue-Ann. That's my down.
Yeah, I felt nothing. I felt nothing anytime she or the COO were around because they were so one-dimensional. I just felt nothing. I thought like these.
And she disappeared for a while.
She's always like in the bathroom. She's always like, you know.
Okay, leave my daughter alone. Not without my child. Okay, here's a question about the COO. And it would have been very freaking Hollywood, and I probably would have hated it.
Maybe he's a CFO.
If he had helped someone at the end, right before he died, if he had helped that train conductor, would you have really respected him or believed that is an arc?
A little arc for him? No.
Exactly.
What it showed there was the same metaphor. The working man, the conductor, till his last day, gave himself to the company. Yeah. You know? Which in South Korea has even more profound, metaphor.
Yeah, I think there was something about how orderly the train was initially, right? To where you're actually seeing her like adjust her scarf. Like this guy comes through, and there's like a zombie woman that. You know, it quickly like turns toxic. But
nobody looks at her. You're right. The first
that series of things was very interesting, right? Like there was so much order and precision on getting everody in where they needed to be, and they're
polite, helping people find their cars.
And then you're adjusting your ties.
I'm used to the Long Island Railroad, where like you can't sit on one seat. Where like, cause there's like a pool of vomit, and then in the other seat, there's like a beer, you know?
Yeah. This is not happening in Amtrak. This is like every day on Amtrak.
Yeah.
Or on the New York City subway. Yeah. But,
that actually I have to say, that is my only real one down. And this is Black Girl Living to the End down. If I was the COO and they busted in my car, I would have been like, F you guys, you stay here. We're going into the vestibule. I wouldn't have let them go past us and let us be closer to the zombies. Why they didn't say, okay, you guys staying here. We're going even further away, but they let them pass. That made no sense to me. That's Black Girl Living to the End made no sense to me.
Okay.
That you're saying.
I didn't have a sense of that geography though, Kristina. Like it wasn't like strong enough for me.
In front of you, the zombies, there was another space that nothing was in. No. Yeah. So if you infected came towards me, I would have been like, stay there, and the most important people pushed to the vestibule. Mm-hmm. Why would you let them go past you?
Seats, I guess.
Knowing there could be zombies behind, and we've already seen we're in the world because we already did the second station. So knowing there's yuck behind, why would you let them past you though?
Absolutely. No, but you know what? Like maybe the vestibule was smaller. It was smaller and they had like a larger group of people, but also maybe they haven't seen Snowpiercer, right?
True.
Has it been made yet?
Right. So I want to jump into some structure and character. I'm just going to do sort of act 1, inciting incident, break into act 2, midpoint, low point in act 2, maybe Dark Night of the Soul, and then the break into act 3. And as we go over some of the beats, you guys want to chime in, just feel free, okay? In act 1, we find out that our protagonist is kind of a shitty father, works too much. He's busy at work. He's a fund manager. He's a bloodsucker. He's divorced from his wife. And his daughter loves him, but she wants to go stay with her mother in Busan.
And this is the third he's given her. Because there's like one in an unopened box.
That is messed up.
No, there was one in an unopened box. There was.
Is there a third? Is there a third one in there?
I think it was the third one that he got. But anyway, that's just bad dad.
Opening image. I forgot. Opening image is the guy runs over the deer.
Well,
and the deer is animated.
It's the statue. It was like actually the construction
the military
statue guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No,
there was like this deer. Kind of.
That's actually the first thing you see is the statue. But
the statue, the first image is not the opening thematic image. Like the theme opening thematic
It is because women, there is no humanity. It looks like a man.
Oh, it's a man in
but
humanity.
It's like this construction. Yes, it's like it's a total loss of humanity. The guy's like a dummy. It's not a real person. It's
and then the closing is the soldiers
kind of
the military
being humane. The closing is the soldiers being humane.
Yeah, I think that parallels really
running
well.
towards them.
No, the soldiers.
There's a lot of images of the soldiers' heads that are a little bit like that. And
okay.
Oh, we didn't even call out. This is the first time where we're not mad at the military in a zombie movie.
Because they got killed. That was a great head fake. You always assume in the zombie film convention that
the government has broken down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but yes, you assume the government's broken down, but that the military is held out somewhere, and when they show up, they will be able to save you. And we had a whole act where the military is all turned to zombies.
That was crazy. That was crazy.
Act 1, let me finish Act 1. We get the deer reanimated with the white eyes. We start to see the rules of zombie for Train to Busan. I want to talk about what the rules of zombie in Train to Busan are as opposed to other zombie films.
Wait, we don't get any rules in Act 1 in my mind. In Act 1, we're setting up the family. Okay, we didn't talk about a catalyst, though.
Well, the only rule we got was the white eyes, is that these zombies have white eyes. Oh, from
those deer. Okay.
Yeah, and that they reanimate very quickly, which is
and they look amazing. Ooh. Amazing looking. Like when they become zombies, it's a thing of beauty. It's
the back-breaking.
Crazy.
Oh my God.
The makeup, the movement, I haven't seen. These are the best looking zombies ever.
It's like break dancing. It's almost like Thriller, right?
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome.
Do the wave.
I can't.
Yeah.
We get the cast of characters. We get the father, the daughter. We got the sports team and the cheerleader. We get the two older ladies.
We set up the train, basically.
Conductor, the homeless crazy man, and the CEO jerk. And very quickly, there's an infected person on the train.
Boom. Act 1.
Who they do not notice because they're too busy tracking down the homeless guy.
Agreed. That drove me crazy that she's going through this and again, black girl. My new name is Black Girl That Lives to the End. Someone comes blah, blah, over my thing. I'm like, Harlow, let's go to that other car. I would just immediately packed up my kid, gone to another car. I've been like, whatever that hot mess is probably going to start spitting or vomiting on people. I wouldn't even thought of zombie. I would just been drunk, smelly person, we're out. We would have left the car. No one's taking notes.
Also, South Korean culture is a lot more polite and formal, right? You sort of.
But then look at the guy in the bathroom.
Yeah, somebody's messed up in the bathroom, and you go and you tell the stewardess about it. You know?
Oh, but it was the COO that told. See, if the COO had seen the zombie in the back, the movie would have ended in 15 minutes. You'd been like, "What's that?" And the movie would have been over, or at least that one car would have died, and they would have.
So what's our inciting incident, our catalyst?
So there are two catalysts. I think there's whatever has happened with this company.
Oh,
with this
that's
with this guy's
I get
company.
It, but it's
no, because they have said we started this. Like when he repeatedly
so
calls his colleague.
That detail is so unnecessary to the story. I don't need it.
Well, I think it's like when you're dealing with a capitalistic morality tale, it could be, it could be important. So there's one catalyst that's happened off screen, and then what happens on screen is the woman gets on the train.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of agree with her in that, okay, I'm sorry, I'm crunching ice. We had to call an A and a B story. I called the A story the zombie outbreak. The B story, the family, the father, the ill-equipped father, the bad father. So the A story's catalyst is the zombie outbreak. I totally agree with Alka. But then I felt like the catalyst for the B story, or the reason we're even going on this journey, is because Dad finally says, after the kid begs, like, Dad, I really want to see Mommy for my birthday. I really want it because, Mommy, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I want to see you. So he finally just gets annoyed and says, okay, fine, I'm going to take you to your mom. Because if he had never taken her mom, they would have died in soul. So the catalyst getting them on the train is he got tired of her complaining about wanting to see her mom tomorrow for her birthday. So they got on the ding-dang train. The zombie thing is...
To me, that's all set up. That's ordinary world. To me, that's
But that's what got the story going, though.
The zombie apocalypse is the A story. It's the father in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. The zombies are the apocalypse is the antagonist.
So what's the catalyst? What's the catalyst to get the story moving?
The inciting incident moment for me is the zombie transforming on the train. The first time we see the girl, that they have one, they've got one on the train.
No?
To me, sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm agreeing. I want to say that if we hadn't distinguished, like, if it was an ensemble, I would have said, yes, it's that zombie. But it's an ensemble with a clear protagonist. So it has to be what got him on the train. What's the catalyst that made him go on that journey? That's breaking it too.
That's the plot point number one, is when the father sees the zombie and grabs his daughter and says, oh, shit. So there's a little time in between.
Why are they on that train? Why do they even get on that train? Why are they on that journey? That's why I'm kind of agreeing.
Sue-Ann is a little shit. Yeah.
If y'all don't stop, if you two don't stop, how can you now making him
Something we all know that you refuse to believe is true is that child should be smacked.
No, it's because I actually, you know what I think? I think the father felt like he was handing her off. He wanted to get rid of her. To me, that was part of his character. He's like, all right, I'll take her to Busan, give her to her mother. This is too much work.
The title's called Train to Busan. Like, that's his journey. Like, this kid won't stop whining about wanting to see her mom on her birthday. And if she had been like, no, I'm okay with my Wii, then it would have never got on the train. This would have never happened.
And they would have died in
with Grandma. Well, because he heard his mom died.
Right. Oh, that was messed up.
That was super messed up.
Grandma on the phone.
Okay, so what is our first act?
Sounds a little like Alka. Like Grandma turns into Alka on the phone. She goes, she just wants to be with her mother, that bitch.
That was really like, yeah, that would have been me. That would have been that. But I wouldn't have been talking about the mother. I would have been talking about that kid.
I love you,
that call is what I think is the end of Act 1. Because
the one under the sheet, or the one to the mother.
No, because I think it is because like deaths are never deaths in literature or film or whatever. It is the end of something, right? And so I think that the end of the ordinary world is signified by the death of the mother. Yeah. Oh. I think when she's on the phone,
it's New World for sure.
I think that's what it is.
I think if they left it, besides it being just like a messed up thing to hear on the phone, like your mother turning into a zombie, it does
and she's
say
like doing it on speakerphone or something. She's like
somehow she answered while she's like doing the thriller, right? She's thrillering it out.
Like
still talking.
Oh, Mom.
But I think the father we actually the grandma on the dying on the phone happens after the first respite. So I think it's partly into Act 2 because the father sees the zombies, grabs the daughter. Then we have the very first stampede, right? This is the Walking Dead thing. People stop caring about each other. People are lobotomized by fear. And we have the first call to just shut the door. And the father, our protagonist, does it. He shuts the door.
It could be. I had that. Yeah.
He shuts the door on the pregnant woman and the awesome chubby warrior guy.
Yeah.
And actually, like, the newspaper goes up in that situation as well. Like,
yes.
they're trying to figure out some of the rules of this, right? Like, then they put up the newspaper, they said maybe that'll calm them or quiet them. Right?
Yep. That was one of our first
that could be
our first rules of the zombie. When you just from a screenwriting perspective, when you're doing any kind of speculative fiction or genre storytelling where you change the rules of the known universe and it's not a naturalistic story, you have to establish the rules and stick to them. And
so what are those rules for the zombie?
So far we have
Act 2 explains it, yeah.
White eyes, very quick transformation, back-breaking.
Fast moving.
Yeah, fast moving. Thank you. That's a huge thing here.
That was really important.
Plus,
they kind of have a lunge in the air kind of situation.
Is there a hat tip to 28 days later for the first fast-moving zombies?
Agreed. But do you realize before we even left Seoul, we got the first taste of it? Yes, the girl came in, but we didn't know what was happening with her. When the train took off, I do believe my wonderful darling daughter saw the first person, which was the outside conductor, get pounced on through the window, and it was like a lunge thing. So that it's not just that zombies run up to you and grab you; they can kind of jump.
Yeah,
which is very 28 days later.
Yeah, and it happens kind of like in a flash, so you're not quite sure what you've seen. Yeah,
agreed.
And I think you can't. The other thing is the zombies can't see in the dark, right? So
did you have problems with that in Act 2? I loved it, and I had problems with it.
I think
I thought it was great. I thought there was finally a new Achilles heel.
You came back kind of scary like that.
I jumped back in. Like those zombies tackling people like linebackers. That was awesome.
Yeah.
At times it was almost comical though. Like that scene where the one military guy's like, help me, and tackled like by.
Oh, that was hard. That was sad. That made me sad.
Blind side.
Like the one soldier that was about to kind of
make it, but he really wasn't. Yeah. But here's the way they offset that.
Huh?
They offset that kind of jumping and the ferocity and the speed with the abundance. And I think they did really well with the glass when they're holding the glass door and the glass breaks and then the upper glass over the train breaks. Yes, it's funny, but the speed and the abundance and the urgency turns comical. Shaun of the Dead, that had some funny zombies, but they never really got any speed, urgency, like, I don't know, I'm looking for a word right now, but I think it's funny until you're all nervous and you're wound and you're bundled up and stressed because they move really quick. They move and kind of like a swarm of bees. Like a few of them are cute, even if they're like bouncing up and down, but like if 20 come at you, your emotions change. And I think when they broke I think there was really two amazing FX when we got to the second station, which is Contagion, the second station with the military people, and the break through the glass. Both of those FX, I think they were brilliant in showing you kind of like the commodity of zombies, the proportion of number of zombies that are coming at you. It's not like two or three.
Well, that became like World War Z.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
But I think
large numbers of fast zombies,
Scary.
Large number of fast zombies. They can't see in the dark.
That happens an hour in. That's one of the rules. So they can't work doors. They transform quick. They break backs. They're fast. White eyes.
You have to be bitten by them. Like it has to be a bite.
It's a bite.
There's a lot of
rather than other
secretions flying, but you have to be bitten.
And it's a quick transformation. Like you're going to transform in probably like a couple of minutes, right? Mm-hmm. About an hour in, so 30 minutes in is when they do the newspaper. And we see, they need to see us to attack us. And then only an hour in, they give us this variation on that, which is when they're going through the tunnel, they can't see in the dark, which is actually not much of a departure from that, and a great evolution of that rule. No, but
so the win and the lose on that to me, and this is one super basic and one makes sense. So the win on that is I love the cell phone play. And I'm like, black girl taking that to live to the end in my head. Like, if you got a cell phone over there, I'm going to call it and make everyone run that way. I love that. I think it's been a trope that's been used in a lot of things where you kind of offset noises and you throw a can in that direction, you run in that direction. Problem with me, black girl being honest, on a train, that little above head barely gets a duffel bag. I cannot see all of those people fitting up there, not making any noise, because there's also a noise element that we're not talking about. There's a noise element that they attract to. So could you actually, on those overheads, move your butt, go down with like 10 people and not make any noise that they wouldn't hear in that car?
Are you seriously talking about like realism in the middle of the zombie film?
Of course I am. We're in Corona situation. I have to think about my escape plan.
Okay. No, I hear you. Okay.
Honestly, joking aside, there is some sense of that was a suspend your disbelief kind of situation.
Yeah, it wasn't particularly consistent, or you know what I mean? Like there were moments where you were like, hey, how did that happen? So if we say, what is our B story?
Dad and daughter. The family.
I'm going to say it's the pregnant wife and the chubby.
It's like the new family forming with the daughter and the
and he's like a future father. He's a future father, and he's going to be really good at it. It crosses at the midpoint. It crosses at the low point. It makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. It's that is I think the B story, and we have
because just like in a rom-com. Like in a rom-com where they have a B story that's like another relationship that reflects on the main relationship, that father-mother situation with their baby and him doing anything for them is like a reflection of how our protagonist is not a great father.
And see, that couple I liked a lot.
That guy's my favorite.
Especially like that dad, the strong man. He was like in another
And of course, he's the guy they sacrifice at the low point. Brilliantly done.
But this is in terms of
goes
writing.
Down swinging.
When you write about when you've heard a million times, like every character should be the star of their own movie. Mm-hmm. It's like this character kind of embodies that. Like you could totally see his movement throughout this film as like. He felt like a protagonist too.
Yeah, the great jacket. Did like purple jacket, whatever.
The baseball player and the cheerleader. They were like a little to a lesser degree, but they also had that going on. So I think the character work here is really strong.
Romeo and Juliet.
That cute ensemble thing was great. Let me just move us forward a little.
Yep.
Act 2A, first half of Act 2. We set up the zombie rules. The rules got to get set up in Act 2 right away, so we know what's going on. Our first stop, right, is the dad gets.
Yep.
Yeah, the dad gets special treatment, right? He makes a phone call and he goes off to the side. He's going to be picked up, privilege right away, right? That remind me a lot of the pandemic we're in right now, like how, certain people are able to escape to their houses in the Hamptons and certain people, have to stay in New York City, right?
There was just a write-up about New Yorkers that are going back home. And it's like they came here within the last 5 years. They're going back to Oklahoma or wherever and just totally peace outing because
that happened after 9/11 too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but okay. So just getting us to the midpoint, I felt like the midpoint was, again, I tell me if I'm wrong, I felt like it was so clean writing wise that the midpoint is when they got off of the train and they all got forced back on, but they were all in different spaces. So now no one's with their loved ones. And so the second half of this movie, they're trying to connect and figure things out.
I would add a little something to that. And
I agree and
say
add.
that is the right point, but it's like really like about this character helping, that hedge fund guy helps the soccer player and the strongman get back, not the soccer player, the baseball player and the strongman get back on the train. And this is the time that we see him for the first time, like kind of reaching out and pulling these guys on the train. And he didn't need to do that, you know, because from the get-go, his motto has been like, you know, we take care of ourselves in a situation like this. That's what he tells his daughter. And then here we have, like, after he's been saved, and in that train station, who's he saved by? He's saved by the homeless
guy.
Right? The homeless guy comes and like he puts a tarp or jacket over somebody who's attacking this guy, right? The hedge fund guy. And after that changes for him, and he helps get them back on the train. That's your midpoint. That's like he's going to be instrumental to the group survival in the second half.
My student's final project this semester in my intro screenwriting course is a short film, and I gave off a list of like film school cliches, and one of them was like homeless guy who saves the day.
You know,
well,
but
here
you know
it works.
It works.
It works thematically. It works. It works. You know, narratively in so many ways to have this guy around.
Yeah. No, and so the dad, the father, and the father to be, and the baseball player, they suit up, right? They do that action movie convention where they suit up like Rambo. Yeah. Right? Like put on all the stuff and they go for fight, and they fight with a baseball bat with their fists. It was brilliant. Badass shit. We find out.
Or repetitive.
They have to go backwards because they're in car 9 and they have to go back.
She didn't want any action in her action movie. Oh.
I mean, look, I understand that you are confined by your train, right? This is also a confined thriller. I mean,
I love it. Yeah, it's true.
Contained thriller. Yeah.
So you have a limited options. But if you go through one car, you go through another car, you go through another car. I mean, is this interesting? Maybe.
Well, they actually address that because they're like, we're in car 9. We have to get our peeps in car 13.
Right.
And they look through and they're just like,
It's a classic set of trials for Act 2, first half of Act 2, though, right? Series of trials, right? Escalating. We're in the second half of Act 2. First act was the trials were the stop where they get off. Midpoint back on the train.
Great scene on the escalator. That escalator scene. Oh, yes.
Oh, when he lifts his pregnant wife and they're all trying to get out. I loved it.
Like they're all going down on this escalator and they're approaching the army and they're like so happy. Like, oh, here's the army. And then the closer you get, you're like, what's wrong with the army? Why are they just standing? Then you're like, why are they twitching?
Great reveal. Like, it got me. So then after the suit up, there is a moment I wanted to bring up, because this is a convention of zombie films, is the baseball player, he runs into his former teammates who are now reanimated. And you have that moment that's part of the zombie film convention that I'd like to explore the metaphor of like when you have to face your friends who are now zombies and you don't want to kill them. The other guys have to kill them for the young baseball player. What metaphor is that in a zombie, or in this fable? What is that? Why? Because they have that in The Walking Dead, like every other week. Like,
say that again. Sorry.
What's the metaphor for running into your zombified friends and family and not being able to kill them?
Oh, I think that's again going back to what Alka said. It's super duper like the hardest of moral choices, And you're right. I think one of the ugliest ones in Walking Dead was the guy who had his daughter in a zombified state in his basement. I think season 3 or 4, and he just couldn't let go. And then you have Arnold Schwarzenegger with Abigail Breslin and Maggie, whereas he has his daughter. And we've seen all these these movies where it's Shaun of the Dead, where you can't reckon to let go of someone you love. I don't know if there's a cliched metaphor. And my child now is running into our podcast, and I keep telling her to go away, but she's not.
But, you know, in Dawn of the Dead, when Sarah Polly wakes up, right, in that first scene, like, that is a terrifying scene because that little girl gets her husband, right?
Yeah.
So immediately, this is a tried and true trope of kind of confronting the lack of humanity in a loved one, in somebody you care about, right?
Night of the Living Dead, her brother,
have to power on as a human. Yeah, I mean, that's the first scene in Night of the Living Dead, is like that departure from, you know, the dead and the living and the human.
In this like Contagion fable context that the New York article was talking about, this just reminded me of, like, I can go visit my mom, but I can't hug her right now, you know? And it reminded me of, like, you know, like the setting we're in right now, the things we're not allowed to do that have been taken from us in this pandemic.
I think it's a bigger thing too, and not to bring us down, and I would really want to get back in the movie, but we also have not just not being able to hug, because I'm lucky, you're lucky, that we have family members that are still close to us and or in our house, but there are some people that, especially, let's be quite sober in the moment, that not only are losing loved ones, but can't give them burials, and will actually never visually see them again.
Can't say goodbye. The ones who are in the hospital, and they we're not allowed to go in there. This is fucking zombie film. This is happening in New York City right now.
God's honest truth, beyond a zombie film, I think this is we know, and we were saying this early on, this is like a narrative that people are going to write. Soderberghs are going to do this film. I don't know how raw it's going to be, like 9/11 for some people, but it's going to be something that I pray has a very poignant touch when it first comes to mainstream media in the form of a film or a
like
VOD.
The coronavirus movies you mean?
Yeah, but I mean more narrative structure, more about a family, more about, you know, a loved one you can't, because it's inevitable, but because it's hit so many people, all of us included, no one's untouched at this point, especially in New York. It's hit so many people, and that lack of closure. What we're talking about in this is a bit of closure. Like my daughter, if she were a zombie, they always say, like, you give the parent the ability to bury your child, but you never want to let them go. So it's a different scenario from not seeing. But I know in the near future we're going to have movies that are systemic of what we're in now, and they're going to have to really tread lightly, because this is hitting a lot of people a lot heavier. You know, I think people should be very careful in the future, because there's no, I feel really shitty to say there is not going to be a shortage of people that try to tackle this. Hopefully it's from an intuitive sense of what they're going through. Unfortunately, there are going to be people that do dramatic films or things on this.
What's interesting is
sensitivity is going to be really important.
What's interesting is that people are saying, like, it's too soon to do dramatic stuff about it. But, you know, Parks and Rec just did a comedy, sitcom episode about it. So we can laugh about
the virus or about losing people. Right now, there's tons of documentaries about the virus.
Nobody's getting lost in Parks and Rec. It was just about being in quarantine. You know,
quarantine. I'm talking about the actual death and the actual reckoning with losing loved ones. It's something that's inevitable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But people are going to have to tread really freaking lightly.
So
let's get back to the movie.
Dad, good father and baseball player suit up. They face their friends they are reunited with the pregnant mom, the girlfriend, and Suan. But then someone does say there's a foreshadowing of the class distinction later, where before they get there, the cheerleader says, "My friends are coming," and they tell her, "We're not going to let them in here." But before they get there, we have our low point. Alka, do you want to take us through some of our low point?
Well, our low point happens when the strong man dies, correct? I think that is another big loss that I think that we feel very deeply. I think it is the loss that you feel most deeply in this film, because his death is so heroic, right? He goes holding on to this door with like everything he's got, and he tells everybody to go. Like, he knows he's gonna die. He names his unborn child. Like, it is in the pantheon of heroic deaths.
Did he get the name out?
Heroic filmic deaths.
He got the name out.
We had the name. Yeah.
He got the name, and also, again, black girl that stays alive to the end chiming in. He's holding the door. I don't think he thinks he's dead. I think he thinks, like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. I think it's another special effect. That head that comes up. No, he doesn't.
No, he said, "I'm running out of energy. Go, it's time."
Wait, y'all, got to back it up. He's holding it because he's the strongest guy, and they're still banging on the door. It's that zombie head that comes up on the door crack that bites him. At that point is when he has like an all is lost moment. Before that, he's just like, hurry up. And black woman that lives to the end moment is like, you see that head down there at the bottom of the door, stomp it while you're holding, stomp that head, because that's the one that comes up like up the shaft of the doorway and bites him. None of the ones.
They should have had you. They should have had you on that train.
Kristina, where's Kristina on the train to Busan when you need her?
Gotta let black girl in. I'm just saying.
You also get
there's lots of stuff that happens right in this moment, right? So the hedge fund guy confronts that COO, the person you would think he would be most simpatico with on this train.
Yes.
And he just goes like
his professional father or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And they get kicked out of that safe car.
Right. This struck me. This struck me as something Trumpian when the CEO turns to him and says he's infected, and says they're infected.
That's why the CEO
nobody believed him. They kind of were like
the lack of
and then the mob was like
mob mentality.
Sure, fine.
Like get him out of here.
Get him out of here. Put him in the vestibule.
Can I just make one beautiful comment on the structure again? If you look at the midpoint, our protagonist was like the COO for the first half, and the second half, he's like the muscle man, and I love that arc. Love it, 180%.
Alka, there's some other low points going on that cross at the same time. Suan has a little cry. And I have in my notes, where's she been? Because we haven't seen her for like several months. But she cries.
Who cares?
The mob.
I hate this kid. This kid is like.
Do you have a family member you want to shout out tonight? Facebook?
No, I love my family. This is strictly my hostility to a very one-dimensional kid who's always crying and whiny, and I can't finish my song, and I gotta get lost. I gotta go to the bathroom at the most inopportune moments. Like, oh, that kid. Throw her off the train.
There is also one of the sisters, the older women, is killed.
Why is she hanging there? Black woman moment. Oh my God. Why walk?
They're elder. Walk. They're older. So, but for me, this is a really moving twist on our low point, because her sister, I think you guys established it's a sister. I thought it might be.
It's her sister.
Let's not go there.
It was her sister.
The sister.
It was her sister.
in her grief, and this is after the people are cast out into the vestibule, which reminded me of refugees, by the way, like a refugee like situation. Like, oh, they finally made it here. Oh yeah, you're not welcome here. Go to the fucking back, right? The sister, in her grief, in her cynicism, after watching the mob and all the death of her sister, says it's stupid to help others before yourself. What a load of shit. You spent your whole life doing that. And then walks into the zombies, like suicide by zombie. She's lost heart. She's lost hope.
Yeah, that was a very weird moment,
Really
though, right?
interesting.
She kind of checks out. She kind of checks out what's going on in this car, and she's like, I don't like any of you. I'm going to open this door.
She's like, I don't like being human. I don't like being alive. There's nothing's fair in this world. And you know what? There have been moments in this pandemic where I felt this way. This is fucked up.
I'm so glad you said that. And you just hit the nail on the head. There is, in the 1980s, there was the movie Day of the Dead. I think there's been remakes later on. In Day of the Dead, it's a military complex, and they're doing experiments on living dead. One guy kind of loses his sense of humanity. And when he feels like, I don't even know if I'm on the right side because these military guys are doing really nasty, sadistic things to zombies, he has a crisis of conscience. He goes to the platform where they lower down supplies, but they're not supposed to. He goes in there, he lets the zombies in, and he sits there, with the forklift button, and he basically lowers all the zombies attacking him. He lowers them down into the military complex. Exact same thing. I feel like when you're saying, is there a name for this trope? There is a name for this psychologically. Fuck all of you. I'm spent. This is the end of everything, and I'm going to be that
fuck
catalyst.
all y'all moment. Yep. It is definitely, there is that, that was the weird flavor of all this, which was she checked out her surroundings before she opened up the door, and I was like, what is she thinking?
She looked at them too.
She's right. We got a CEO running it, a mob. We're casting people out. My sister's dead. This world is shit. And that represents a really powerful set of emotions that I think we've all had our dark moments in this pandemic about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean.
And so that's another layer.
And I did not think of that in that moment, but I didn't mark that it was just so strange. And it was good, but it was very, very strange.
100%.
It's another layer to this low point. The low point here is fantastic. So much stuff is going on.
And she was 100% lucid when she did that. She wasn't like, oh, I'm a la la. No, she was like, fuck all of you. You're not worth it.
Yeah,
I don't give a fuck.
The low point, the all is lost, is often followed by Dark Night of the Soul. Her moment is really Dark Night of the Soul. It's like, I'm no longer human, right? And
I feel like the Dark Night of the Soul is marked on
when they get kicked
the
out.
hedge fund guy. The hedge fund guy gets that call that says he started at this biotech firm.
Oh, that happens there too.
It was just like
earlier,
and he gets the camera gets kind of close on him.
Okay,
and he's just like in this weird blue light. It's just like a single shot of him, and that's why it's like it's different, right? It's marked. Both these shots that we're talking about, they're like singles. They're like kind of close up, and there's so much action in this movie that. It's almost like these are the tip-offs. Like, this is an important moment, right? And this Dark Night of the Soul is where this guy has actually changed. He's become a guy who's surviving within a group of people. His survival depends on the group. Me is we, in the words of Muhammad Ali. And he's reckoning with his hand and his company's hand in all of this. Like, that's why, what happens before this film starts is also something to be reckoned with. It is like we are reckoning with a combined history of events here,
And I think that moment, and in the beginning when you were talking to me, the moment where he gets the phone call that says our biotech company caused this, at first it did strike me as like, really, do we need this? But you mentioned it enough, and we've talked enough about this, the CEO versus our fund manager protagonist, and it made me. And you mentioned that the baseball player is the same actor from Parasite, and Parasite, right, directed by another South Korean director, has a whole capitalist metaphor to it as well. So
yeah, and trains themselves, right? You think about the setting of this film. Trains themselves lend it so well, like not just in Snowpiercer, but here as well, like to the class system. You know, they are divided by class and compartments, and and their compartments. They're actual cars that are divisions, natural divisions that, you know, are actual physical divisions. So it's like it kind of, you know, these are your tip-ups. Like you see a film on a train, you know some of that is going to come into play, right?
Small group remains. Father finds out about the biotech company. The train is blocked. The conductor says we got to transfer. All of a sudden we got like a train on fire. Got a little wreckage. We're going through like all of these this is our act 3. We're going through all these disaster obstacles.
Can we just say that off the train though? Act 3 happens off the train in the 3rd station.
But the train conductor definitely gets.
I think it's once the zombies eat all of the people in the mob in
the first class
VIP car, and the small group remains. We're kind of in Act 3, but you're right. The train being blocked happens right after that, and then it's like got to get off the train. And so, this whole movie's been on a train, and now we're going to get off the train. There's like a flaming train. There's a wreckage that they're stuck under. It's a little bit like being stuck in a cave or like a volcano movie. But we eventually. The CEO gets eaten.
Wait, let's back it up though, because we're talking about arcs, and I feel like I don't know our starting point except for calling him undesirable and the outcast. But the beginning of Act 3 or into Act 3 is where we really got to have our arc for our homeless guy, and I loved it because he got to be a hero as well. All the people.
Where's his arc?
We don't really know much about him about being an outcast, but his arc is the moment when he, the pregnant woman, the awesome daughter, and the father are all trapped, pinned under a train with the glass about to break. And the father goes out, and I feel like is he leaving them? But he's been so good so far. So I don't know if that's a red herring, but you know, he's actually leaving them to come like pull the metal away so they can get out. But you don't know why he's just escaping and not calling to them to follow him. But the only people left are the pregnant woman, the awesome daughter, and the homeless man, who hasn't really been giving any credit through this whole thing. And they're stuck under glass. I thought it was a beautiful shot. Like, again, glass break. We have this is the 3rd time. We had the doors with the guys, the above the train cascading of zombies, and it's about to happen in your face. And as the glass is cracking, his arc is the moment to say, like, you don't know me from Sam Adam. I'm not really beautiful in your eyes, but I'm going to save your life. And he tells them to go, and that he's willing just to die like the muscle guy and be eaten to death to give them a couple of minutes leeway or headway.
Yeah.
I fell in love with him that moment. And he didn't have much to say in this whole film.
It's like an echo of the strongman at the low point. We get like a second version of that in Act 3. Yeah.
When the daughter's so cute. But, yeah.
Then we get our, CEO turns into a zombie. We got our dad. We're just only 3 remain. The pregnant woman. By the way, I wanted to ask you guys this. That pregnant woman is running very fast. Do you guys do a lot of running when you're pregnant?
I can move.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believed it completely.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not.
Zombies are coming. So.
I thought it was kind of weird though when her husband was around, how like kind of he had to carry her around and stuff. But when
he lifted her over escalator. That's one. I don't know how quick and agile I would be over an escalator.
He's in a skirt. Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, Alka, you're just
our
athletic. You could've jumped it.
Our protagonist is fighting the CEO, now zombified, before our eyes, in a great metaphor for, capitalism. And the dad is bitten. And
wait, can I do one more thing? Not to take over again. But I feel like this writer really pushed the point of guys are good. Because let's, in all honesty, black girl that lives to the end talking, the conductor could have been like, freak all you. There's nothing invested, and this is a shit show, and taken off. But even the conductor, every male except for the COO, wound up being a good person. The
conductor's the working man. He does not abandon his job.
Employee of the month. He was employee of the year.
He is the frontline worker.
Agreed.
He is the frontline worker who does not abandon his job.
100%.
And says, I'm going to get us another train.
The COO. He was even like, the COO is like running towards him on the track. And I'm like, keep going, dude. Like guy. With the but he was like, I will go and help this guy.
Yeah. Ugh. His duty, right? Meanwhile, the CEO has no concept of that. So, great moment. Dad is bitten. And I'm sure at that point, they're going to reveal to us that the dad is immune to the virus.
You were hoping.
I'm sure that's what's going to happen. Because you can't kill the protagonist, not after this journey. And
it's kind of late to kill the protagonist, but people kill the protagonist, right?
It is such a genius move.
I've seen that. I thought I was actually
has to leave the
because
daughter.
I thought this unit, right, was what I was kind of following. I was following this unit of like the pregnant lady and the daughter, for sure. I was like, they're going to make it. But it was like they killed off the homeless guy who I thought, he's going to make it. Mainly because I also thought, like Kristina kind of mentioned earlier in our podcast, is there is a man who is like on the fringes of society, who's used to kind of scraping a life together, figuring stuff out in very, very challenging circumstances, and he's going to be the one to survive. But to kill both these men off on both sides of the economic spectrum, I thought that was what was truly shocking, because I thought one of them is going to make it. Because if I had my, if I was predicting this movie, I would have said like, okay, we get this unit. It's reformed of different people, but I would have thought, like the homeless guy would make it, the pregnant lady and this little girl.
Interesting.
And they would be the family unit walking out of that tunnel.
Rather than
kind
just
of cobbled together
daughter and the pregnant lady. Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting choice. And the killing off of our protagonist, the father, Suk-woo, is
indicative of Children of Men. Remember when we talked about this, I said, I don't know how y'all
that's
feel.
why. Yeah.
I kept thinking, oh my God, only the woman and the baby make it to the end. The dudes die. And I didn't want to tell you because you hadn't seen it. But I was like, I don't know how y'all are going to feel about this.
But there is something very kind of, like the Holy Trinity, everything happens in threes. There's something about that they break.
He has to pay for his sins. He was the fund manager. He was a dick until this train ride. He was not a good father.
But why kill the homeless guy? What does the homeless guy have to kill for?
I don't know.
He was pretty valiant throughout this.
I would have been down with him surviving. But it's a bold move to kill off the protagonist and then not end your film. You keep going. Yeah. Right? So that little girl can sing a Hawaiian song. What do you know about that song? I don't know anything about that.
It's a Hawaiian song. I know you and you. Yeah, that is not. Why is she singing this? Why?
The hateration.
It was at her school and he had never heard it.
Listen, what I knew was going to happen.
But why does that stop the army from shooting them?
Because
this is a good screenwriting moment.
Human voice.
This is a screenwriting moment. you have them in the dark. You have the choice. They're told to kill these humans, right? They're told to kill these figures, we don't know if they're human or zombie. The guy says kill them. They have every right to shoot anything that moves these days.
That could have been a really ridiculously horrible ending, shooting a pregnant woman and getting
they could have mowed them down. But I was saying, as a screenwriter, the figures are going to hug or kiss or do something zombies cannot do to prove that they are human. And then the singing. Zombies do not sing. And that's
this Hawaiian song.
It's beautiful.
That's how I knew. I loved it. I was fine with it. I thought that maybe there was some other way they could go, a hug or kiss. Like zombies don't hug or zombies don't hold hands. Maybe they could have looked at hand holding, something like that. But it's a great mechanism because you want to create the tension and the possibility that they might shoot them. And you sold me on your opening image of the head. What was it? Of the statue?
The dummy construction guy. Yeah.
Because what we have is soldiers who can be misinterpreted as not thinking, as dummies, right? But these soldiers are making choices. They've been told to shoot, right? They have orders to shoot, but they decide to look for humanity and they see it or hear it. And it's just like Children of Men. The military scramble to help the survivors. A living child reminds even the military men of their humanity. Cut to black.
Yep. Rewind.
I just wish it were a different child.
Of course you do. Rewind.
You want the delivery of the pregnant child?
Jeez.
Something.
And Sue-Ann says, I will help you deliver the child. I am a midwife.
Okay. That's too much.
She would. She would know what to do.
Rewinding back to the train car, a shout out again to, and Alka mentioned it before, there was an ode to World War Z because the pile up of zombies where they were smart enough to climb on each other's bodies to make this kind of ladder onto that last car.
World War Z.
It was like that was a rule from World War Z when the climbing of the wall that was very effective and very scary. And also a shout out to a different film called Feast, Project Greenlight's second round.
I know Feast.
Because Feast killed the protagonist, the hero, within 2 seconds of his screen time.
Yeah, and they had a new protagonist every 10 minutes, and that doesn't work. It doesn't.
I thought it was amazing. So you can kill the protagonist. You're allowed to kill the protagonist.
You sacrificed story structure for a joke in Feast.
So, boys and girls, you can kill your protagonist.
Last comments and questions, or comments, things that you wanted to say that you haven't said all night. Take a moment.
I love you and you love me.
I want to say that the sweetest death scene of, this last survivor group was this baseball player and the cheerleader.
Romeo,
Yeah. Yeah, he couldn't let her go. And
he didn't leave her, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Romeo and Juliet, thank you. I didn't catch that. Beautifully.
That was very sweet. And
then he got Parasite afterwards, so good job.
And I think that's what this film did particularly well. Though I don't know that I would return to it. I don't know that it's ever going to be a film that I'm like, hey, let's watch Train to Busan again, because I don't think it does. It does some things very beautifully. What we're saying, like cinematically, I think this film looks great. These zombies are the best looking zombies. The way they animate them, it's gorgeous. I think also the characters, you manage to care for a group of people in a way that is worthwhile. But does it evolve the zombie genre or the zombie landscape in a way that feels important? It doesn't. It really doesn't. I mean, I'm glad I saw it, but am I going back? Probably not.
Kristina, last comments?
Okay, I always have to piggyback on Alka. Gosh darn it. I feel like it or not, there aren't many films that have evolved the zombie narrative as caring about zombies per se, with the exception, which most people didn't like, Warm Bodies, because it's more about how living people react to plagues or rage or whatever you want to call it, zombification, all of these. It's how they deal with an epidemic, how humans deal with the de-evolution of society. So I don't think there are going to be many things where you're like, well, now I care more about zombies. And they have really made me think about maybe Fido, maybe the end of Shaun of the Dead when Sean's best friend he kept and they played Xbox in the back room. But very few really make you posit that you need to care about zombies but more so focus on like I said, the evolution of humanity. So I think that's what's important. But I will say for the human aspect, Train to Busan did a really well-paced, well-structured for writers to look at job of breaking down how to do a 3-act structure, how to set up a protagonist with a pretty strong arc, how to make an ensemble worthy of being an ensemble and not just too many people that don't have much to contribute to a script or a screenplay or a film. So I think it was successful in that. And if someone were to actually break this down for a class, that's the utility there. How to give other people an ensemble an arc and make us fall in love with more than one person. They did that very successfully. So that's my take.
In London in 1665, there was the plague, and there was an author named Daniel Defoe. He wrote a journal of the plague year, a history of the plague. And in that journal, he wrote, there was hardly a horse to be bought or hired in the whole city. He recounted in the event the gates had been shut and all were trapped. Everyone behaved badly, though the rich behaved worst. Having failed to heed warnings to provision, they sent their poor servants out for supplies. History repeating itself. That's why we're looking at these movies. That's why these themes matter. We're in the middle of this pandemic. Might as well be a zombie apocalypse.
Cinema saw it coming.
Yeah. I want to thank you guys, Kristina and Alka, for being on the script. Join our Facebook page by searching for NYC Screenwriters Collective. Follow us on Twitter at ScriptFeed. Email us with questions, comments, and complaints at scriptfeed@gmail.com. I'm David Negrin. Now we're going to set a timer for 10 minutes and write something until it goes off.